Hello students, welcome to this module of the welder trade. In this session, we will learn about performing fillet weld, lap and T-joint on MS sheet, 3 mm thickness in overhead position by dip transfer.
Objectives. At the end of this exercise, you shall be able to prepare the sheets as per size 150 mm length, 50 mm width and 3 mm thickness. Set and tack weld the sheets as lap and T-joint as per drawing. Set the job overhead position for welding. Deposit the metal in the joints with proper leg length. Inspect the weld bead for surface defects. Shall we now take a look at the tools and equipment needed for gas metal arc welding process? GMAW. Steel rule, ball peen hammer, half round filer, tri-square, tongs, chipping hammer, steel wire brush, personal safety equipment, key or spanner, helmet type screen, angle grinder, gas regulator with preheater and flow meter, CO2 gas heater, shielding gas hoses, welding power source, wire feeder, supply of electrode wire, welding gun, shielding gas cylinder, CO2, mild steel sheet 3 mm. Now, let us learn how to get ready for performing lap and T-joint on MS sheet 3 mm thick in overhead position by dip transfer. Pre-welding preparation. Ensure that you have all the necessary safety equipment, including safety glasses and gloves. Place the mild steel sheet on a clean and stable surface. Position the hand shearing machine on a flat and level workbench. Ensure that it is securely held in place to prevent any movement during the cutting process. Adjust the machine's blade gap according to the thickness of the mild steel sheet. In this case, 3 mm. The blade gap should allow for a clean and efficient cut without excessive force. Using a ruler and a scribe or marker, carefully mark and 50 mm width the 150 mm length on the mild steel sheet. Double check the measurements to ensure accuracy. Place the marked sheet in the hand shearing machine, aligning the marked cut line with the machine's cutting edge. Once the cut is complete, release the pressure on the handles and lift the machine's blade away from the sheets. After cutting, inspect the edges of the mild steel sheet to ensure a clean and precise cut. Clean the surface of the sheets by carbon steel wire brush. Set the T-joint as per specification. Wear protective clothing. Start setting up of GMAW machine. Ensure that CCMS filler wire with correct diameter is taken. Fix the 0.8 mm diameter CCMS filler wire spool in position. Lock it up and pull the wire through the guide tube, rollers, spiral and contact tip of the torch. Ensure that CO2 gas cylinder is fitted with flow meter. Check the machine setup before starting the welding. First, Check the power supply of the GMAW machine. Check the CO2 gas cylinder valve and gas flow rate. Check the feeder wire machine for the correct speed. Set up the welding torch with the accessories. Check the filler wire feeder on the welding torch. Ensure that the GMAW machine is working fine. Start the welding process by striking the arc at sample mild steel sheet. Set the torch in the right position. Set current to 90 to 100 amperes. Corresponding wire feeding rate 3 to 4 mm per minute. Set 19 to 20 arc voltage and use dip transfer mode. Tack weld on both ends of the T-joint. Set the lap joint on the top of the 150 mm sheet T-joint. Tack weld keeping minimum length of 10 mm on both sides of the lap joint. Now, let us learn how to perform lap and T-joint on MS sheet 3 mm thick in overhead position by dip transfer. Fix the tack welded job in the weld positioner at overhead position. Ensure that the torch assembly hose containing the spiral, filler wire, gas hose, etc. is long enough so that it can be carried over your shoulder while welding in overhead position. Using a welding helmet and wearing overall protective clothing is very essential to protect the whole body from the spatters in overhead welding position. Check the hoses once again for any gas leak. Since the process is overhead welding, double check the flow rate of the filler rod. Keep the welding torch away from your body while performing the welding in overhead position. While performing the welding, ensure that molten metal should not sag. To avoid sagging of molten metal, move the welding torch at a constant travel speed. Deposit the root run using dip transfer mode. Use stringer bead welding technique. Since it is a 3 mm sheet, use proper technique to avoid distortion. Maintain a uniform travel speed to get the required bead reinforcement, height and appearance. Ensure proper leg length and even fusion of sheets with proper angle and arc travel speed. Clean the welded joint with a steel wire brush. Change the T-joint and keep tack welded lap joint visible on the welding positioner. Follow the same safety procedure like what we did for welding T-joint. Deposit the root run using stringer bead welding technique. Ensure for good bead reinforcement, height and appearance. Since it is a 3 mm sheet, a single run is enough. If required, we can go for a second run. Ensure good penetration and even fusion of sheets A and C with suitable torch angle and arc travel. Avoid undercut on sheet C. Ensure the edge of the sheet A at the toe of the weld is not melted off due to excessive weaving. Ensure there is no undercut at the other toe of the lap weld on sheet C. Clean the bead of the lap joint with steel wire brush. Clean the bead of the T-joint with steel wire brush. Inspect the welded joint for undercut, uneven bead, edge of the plate melted off, distortion, good bead profile. Safety practices to be followed by welders. Ensure that the torch assembly hose containing the spiral, filler wire, gas hose, etc. is long enough so that it can be carried over your shoulder while welding in overhead position. Using a welding helmet and wearing overall protective clothing is very essential to protect the whole body from the spatters in overhead welding position. Use the anti-spatter spray as and when the torch nozzle gets clogged with weld spatters. Note that if this is not done, the wire feed may be irregular, causing an unestablished arc. The carbon dioxide (CO2) gas flow will not be uniform, causing atmospheric contamination of the weld and porosity.
Recap. In this topic, we have learned to prepare the sheets as per size 150 mm length and 50 mm width and 3 mm thickness. Set and track weld and the sheets as lap and T as per drawing. Set the job overhead position for welding. Deposited the material in the joints with proper leg length. Inspect for surface defects on the weld beam. I hope you all understood the process of lap and T joint on MS sheet 3 mm thickness in overhead position by dip transfer mode. Thank you students, and let us meet in the next session. Bye.